Biology is the science of life. Its name is derived from the Greek words bios, that means life, and logos, that means study. Biology studies the structure, function, growth, origin, evolution, and distribution of living organisms. There are many branches that derive from biology, such as anatomy, anthropology, botany, embryology, biomedicine, biochemistry, cytology, genetics, histology, immunology, virology, and zoology. Every day, new knowledge about life is acquired, and many tools are created that allow us to delve into the mechanisms that are intertwined to maintain and understand life. What leads us to one of the biggest questions that human being has been wondering since a long time ago. How did life start in the planet? Many think that life was originated due to a supreme being. Others think that life was generated spontaneously, etc. As human beings progressing and obtaining knowledge and possible explanations for the origin of life are created. The only thing that we surely know until now is that everything that happened gave rise to a system based on DNA and RNA, capable of storing information to create various molecules and edit their modifications. The DNA was compacted in a way that only opens areas that must be transcribed, translated, replicated, and keeps hidden those that will not be required. We already know that the environment can also modify this reading, and the modifications occur in the DNA molecule without altering its sequence. We haven't discovered the origin of life. That is why it is relevant to keep looking, keep discovering, and keep acquiring new information in order to find the answer.
Characteristics of living beings. The characteristics that unify living beings can be summarized in 8. Organization. Life on Earth is characterized by being organized and hierarchized in levels, in which the lower one gives substance to the superior, and nothing can exist or function without this complex organization. Genetic code. The genetic code is a sequence of nitrogenous bases that combine to produce words in a language understandable to all living beings, so it is considered to be universal. This fact shows that all living beings have a common ancestral origin. Response to stimuli. Living beings can respond to different stimuli such as light, sound, temperature, chemical substances, among others. Each species has developed mechanisms or sensory organs to capture, integrate, and respond to what happens in its environment or outside it. Homeostasis. Homeostasis refers to the set of self-regulation phenomena that leads to the conservation of steadiness in the composition and properties of the internal environment of an organism that allows it to have a free life. Metabolism. Living beings use energy to maintain homeostasis and life. That means they must take components from their external environment, transform them, and use them for their benefits. Growth. Growth implies the incorporation of new biomolecules into the organism, which is synthesized for that purpose. Reproduction. The reproduction implies that the information transmitted from one generation to the next is done through the inheritance molecule. Reproduction can be asexual, sexual, or parasexual. Asexual reproduction. Its main characteristic is the fact that the descendant is genetically identical to its predecessor. Sexual reproduction. This type of reproduction involves the fertilization of two different cells, the sperm and the egg. Parasexual reproduction. Through parasexual reproduction, genetic variability is achieved through the exchange of DNA that is carried out by conjugation, donation of genetic material through a breech or a pilus. Transduction. A transmitted agent like a virus carries the DNA that is introduced into the genome of the host bacterium. Transformation. A bacterium that introduces and incorporates DNA fragments from dead bacteria into its own genome. Adaptation, ability, and evolution. If the environment changes, the organism that lives in it must transform themselves to adapt to that change. Natural selection is in action. Therefore, only those who have the necessary characteristics to will prevail. Not necessarily the strongest individual, but the best adapt. Through this process, individuals change and inherit these modifications to their descendants, and that is the meaning of evolution.
The history of the microscope started with Zacharias Jensen and his father. They both were engaged in making glasses. One day, Zacharias Jensen had the idea of combining two lenses inserted at the ends of a tube, and he realized that combining these lenses in that way, he could achieve a greater magnification ranges than with one glass. The magnifications that he obtained were between 3 and 9 times, and he only saw this like a novelty and not with scientific purpose. But then Robert Hooke in 1665 came and improved the microscope to 50 times. With this he could observe the cell and he could name it. Years later, Anton van Leeuwenhoek developed a new technique to manufacture lenses that allowed him to observe samples with magnifications up to 200 times, and with this he could observe cells such as spermatozoa, protozoa, and even some bacteria. And with the years, the research continued. In 1830, Theodor Schwann and Matthias Schleiden proposed the first postulate of the cell theory. They proposed that the cell is the elemental unit of plants and animals. And then, in 1858, Rudolf Virchow proposed that all cells come from a pre-existing one, omnicellula ex cellula. And then two more postulates came, and one of them was, the cell is the physiological unit of life. And with this, we have to say that all vital functions take place within the cells, and only one is enough to generate life. The other postulate is that the cell contains the hereditary information for the control of its development growth. And we can add a fifth postulate, and they say that the unit of life is healthy and the individual is healthy, so the disease starts with the cell. And with this we can finish the history of the microscope, the cell, and the cell theory.
Types of cells. Cells can be divided into two: prokaryotic cells, which comprise archaea and bacteria, and eukaryotic cells, which include animal, plant, fungi, and protozoa. The main difference between eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells is that the eukaryotes have an endomembrane system, whereas prokaryotes do not. Besides, eukaryotes are usually larger. The endomembrane system comprises the internal membranes, that is, the membranous organelles, including the nucleus. The membranous organelles bestow the eukaryotic cells the advantage of organizing and making more efficient the use of its cells resource. This fact implies that eukaryotic cells could specialize and constitute larger multicellular organisms. This difference allows us to explain and understand why prokaryotes are always unicellular. It is because to survive, each cell is constrained to do everything it is needs. Not so the case of multicellular organisms, in which there are specialized cells. The task division allows the increase in the size and complexity of the organism. Of course, this specialization also has disadvantages, because multicellular organisms need more constant conditions for their survival. Prokaryotic cells are simpler than eukaryotes, but in no way should be underestimated, since they have been successful survivors in the planet despite time and extinctions. Prokaryotic cell. Prokaryotes are cells without a nucleus. The most noticeable difference is that their genetic material is found in the cytoplasm, in an area called the nucleoid. They are also unicellular and they can be reproduced asexually or parasexually. Prokaryotes can have different forms: coconut, bacilli, or spiral shape. In the case of the archaea, the morphology is more varied. They can have changing forms: irregular lobe, flat, rectangular, or square. The components in all prokaryotic cells include plasma membrane, cell wall, cytoplasm, nucleoid, ribosomes, and prokaryotic compartments. The diversity of prokaryotes is endless. Regarding the metabolism, they can be anaerobic or aerobic. On the nutrition side, they can be heterotroph or autotroph. Eukaryotic cell. There are two types of eukaryotic cells, the animal and the vegetable. The most noticeable difference among them is the presence of the nucleus, the membranous compartment in which the genetic material is confined. Animal cells are structurally more complex. They present distinctive features that define them. That is, animal cells are different in their components concerning the vegetable ones. The components of the animal cells are plasma membrane, membranous organelles that has nucleus, rough endoplasmic reticulum, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, lysosomes, peroxisomes, mitochondria, and then non-membranous organelles, cytoskeletal elements, centrosome, centrioles, ribosomes, and cytoplasmic inclusions. Plant cell. The plant cell has components similar to those of the animal, because both are eukaryotic cells. The organelles that have a similar composition and function in both cells types are plasma membrane, nucleus, cytoskeletal, Golgi apparatus, ribosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, and peroxisomes. Next, we will mention the organelles and structures that are found in plant cells. Cell wall, central vacuole, plastids that divide in chloroplast, leucoplast, chromoplast, amyloplast, elioplast. Next, glycosome. And finally, plasmodesma.
Where everything passes through the cell membrane. If the molecules pass one by one, it can be active or passive. If they pass massively, it can be endocytosis or exocytosis. Active transport spends energy, goes against the gradients of concentration. Passive transport does not waste energy, goes in favor of the concentration gradient. It is classified as simple diffusion, where polar molecules pass through the lipid bilayer, or facilitated diffusion. The passage of molecules depends on the presence of integral membrane proteins. Endocytosis, incorporation of materials into the cell. Pinocytosis, the cell drinks molecules in a suspension. Phagocytosis, the cell eats chunks of material. Receiver-mediated endocytosis. It is regulated by the receptors in the cell membrane. Exocytosis. The cell secretes material. Regulated. The cell responds to a signal to release products. Constitutive. Constant secretion. Levels of organization. All beings constitute levels of organization. First, we have atoms. Atoms constitute molecules and biomolecules. Molecules make organelles and structures. A set of organelles creates a cell. A set of cells with a common function creates a tissue. A set of tissues creates an organ. Organs are grouped into systems. A set of systems creates an organism. A set of same organisms creates a population. A community is a set of populations. A group of communities from all domains and abiotic factors create an ecosystem. Finally, the biosphere is a total set of all ecosystems present in Earth. Types of tissues. Epithelial. Covers the surface of the body and inside of some organs like the skin. It can be simple, stratified, and transitional. Connective, also known as conjunctive, is the filling between organs. Examples are adipose, reticular, bone, fluid, and cartilaginous. Muscular, they have the ability to contract and thus allow movement. Gives the shape to the muscles. It is divided in three types: smooth, cardiac, and skeletal. Nervous, has two types of cells: neurons and glial cells. It is constituted mostly of networks of neurons, forms the nerves and the spinal cord.
An organ system is a group of anatomical structures that work together to perform a specific function or task. Although we learn about each organ system as distinct entity, the functions of the body's organ systems overlap considerably, and your body could not function without the cooperation of these organ systems. The human body is composed by 11 different organ systems. These include the following: integumentary system, muscular system, skeletal system, nervous system, circulatory system, lymphatic system, respiratory system, endocrine system, urinary system, reproductive system, and digestive system. Homeostasis is a set of self-regulation phenomena that lead to the maintenance of constancy in the properties and composition of the internal environment of an organism. So, the homeostasis is the balance in the internal environment of the body, and the body makes adaptive response in order to maintain health. The homeostatic mechanism are through the feedback and control process. When an internal imbalance occurs due to several causes, these processes are activated and resolved.
Health, according to the Real Academia Española, is the state in which the organ begins executes normally all health functions and is affected by the disease. That is the loss of balance and homeostasis. Also, its minor alteration, more or less severe, of health, and health is affected by industrialization, automation, acceleration of the pace, and the factors that intervene of the health are genetics, lifestyle, public health, and the environment. Other factors that intervene in health conservation are the social, physical, and mental. Adolescence is a critical transitional period that includes the biological change of puberty, and they have changed life, secretion for men and menstruation for women. But what is the health in adolescence? Health of the adolescent is the state of the brain. Since it is one in charge to carry a basic process. The aspect that has our adolescents must adapt and connect with maturity. They need to have balance in these aspects, and the risk factors behavioral that are physical inactivity and spending much time sitting. The physiological that are obesity, high blood pressure, demographic that are the age and gender, environmental that are not having access to clean water and air pollution, genetic and muscular dystrophy, substance abuse, addiction to drugs, and depression that are anxiety and diabetes. The lifestyle is related to the social and cultural behaviors that a person has. The healthy lifestyle promotes habits beneficial to all the aspects in the life. Other words, biosocial balance are two ways to look at the behaviors, and in addition we have other. There are the behavior pathogens that increase the risk of an individual to get sick. One example is overeating and drinking alcohol. The risk behavior are strategies that health managers should promote as prevention measures, and the behavioral immunologists are behaviors that help the person to be less susceptible to some disease. Example, we have 5. 1 is sleep at 7 to 8 hours per day, have a breakfast every day, practicing physical activity, do not consume alcohol, and do not consume drugs.